Hello and welcome to the Shadow Chronicles, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the inner work, generational trauma and your shadows. Having the hard conversations so you don't have to. You know, the shit that doesn't get talked about. My name is Sky. I'm a shadow integration specialist and I'm here to guide you so you can unfuck yourself by doing the shadow work, healing the generational trauma so you can vibrate with confidence and fucking enjoy your life. And my co-host
is Todd. I am an integrative health coach who helps people own more of who they are and change their lives on many different levels to become who they really are. Find your compass and follow it, to say it simply.
Welcome to part 2 as Todd and Sky continue this conversation on the shadow of mum guilt and unpicking all the topics that have come up through this discussion.
So what I mean by that is, and I've talked to a lot of people, you know, and when they talk about overwhelm and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, she said like stressing about stuff, and so I'm like, well, what are you stressing about? Like everything. I kind of like, let's like draw it down, let's make it specific, and like when they put their kids to bed, they will go and like clean their house to, you know, it's sparkling. And they don't actually stop until like fucking midnight or whatever else.
Well, in case the king turns up.
And I'm like, why are you doing that?
That.
And they're like, oh, I have to. And I'm like, but do you?
Who says have to?
Have
and
to.
This is why I'm pushing back on it. This is why I'm asking these questions. Like,
so
what have to?
You know, so like I know, for example, my mental load may not be as high as what someone else's is, but like as I just said, I've spent a lot of time, you know, breaking those patterns of like
working on it,
you know, have tos, because there is obviously a level of shit we have to do. Like as we were talking about earlier.
Oh, we'll get to that.
We're an adult. We have shit to do. We're responsible, maybe sometimes.
If you knee deep in dirty nappies and empty baked bean tins, there's some have to about that shit.
Right. You know, so like for me personally, when my kids go to bed, I'm like, okay, well, what's my have to? Well, my kitchen needs to be clean for one because, you know, rats, mice, bugs, fucking food, whatever the case may be. So, like, that needs to be done. There may be a couple of other things that I need to get done. But I look at the house and go, okay, well, the house is not clean, but it's not messy either.
Yeah.
That can wait till tomorrow. You know, I've got a gap in the day. I might as well just, you know, tidy up tomorrow. I'm not going to, you know, ruin my rest time.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm not good enough if my house is not sparkling clean.
Especially when that rest time is aimed at you feeling more like you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, I think, realistically the point.
You know, what do you want to do? I want to read my book. Like.
Yeah. If you don't get to do what you want to do, even if there is kids involved, like everyone gets resentful at that point.
Right, that's it. Because then you get, you know, then that anger kicks in of like, oh, I'm always the one cleaning. I'm just going to like hamp on cleaning the house here. I'm always the one cleaning the house and everyone else fucking trashes it. I'm always the one, you know, like when you're in that cycle, it's so easy to build up and then, you know, you blow up and then you feel guilty for blowing up.
And then you have to do it more and have to sort of stuff that shit down.
Shit down.
And that's why I'm asking about the like pretty much every episode we've recorded so far. So that self-awareness conversation of like, why do you have to?
Yeah.
Asking yourself, like kind of like we used to describe.
Yeah.
It's like, what's my have to?
Yeah.
I'm happy to devote half an hour to a have to.
Yeah.
Because it's done and it matters and this is who I'm choosing to be.
Yep.
And then I get to choose this on the other side of that. Because otherwise, yeah, you do end up that glue that's stretched too thin that it ends up breaking and you get a bit stabby and yelly.
And then on top of that, like I have support in other areas too, you know, and all of those sort of things. So, yeah, like you've got your have-tos and then you've got your have-tos. Like which one are your actual have-tos or, you know, and stuff like that. And which one are the ones that you are doing because you believe that that's how you gain validation or, you know, if your husband or your partner comes home, he's just going to scream at you because the house is a little bit messy. And if that's the case, I'd be having a fucking serious conversation about like worth and boundaries.
Control dramas at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But then on the flip side of that as well, and I want to touch on this because I know this happens and I have spoken to people about this before, and I don't want to just like ham on like, you know, the mother with all the mental load and all that sort of stuff.
Glad you bring it up because I was about to bring it up as well.
I have spoken to it, and on the flip side as well, we're having these conversations with, you know, mothers that are so overloaded and over burnt out and stuff like that. And I ask them, or I tell them, I'm like, okay, well, go and have a break, go and catch up with your friends, get, you know, your partner or the dad to look after the kids. Oh, he can't do that. But why? Oh, he doesn't know how to. Huh? And
so even if it's not him that's got weaponized incompetence, he's not going to do as good a job as me, so I have to.
Yep. He won't do it right. And I've had a lot of those conversations, and I'm like, well, go have fun when you're in the loony bin because you've completely broken down and, you know.
And this is why the have-tos are worth pulling apart because if you're creating a rod for your own back.
That's a you problem.
Like how can anyone fix that? Even if he wanted to, even if he just said, babe, fuck off, I've got it.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of people.
Are you going to be able to go out and go, I'm just going to enjoy my time here, or are you going to be still present? And that's why I'm sort of asking, is like, what is switching off really?
And that's it. And I've had a lot of conversations with mothers that have been like that. Like, he won't do it right. He won't do it right. They don't really like it when I call them out on that, by the way. And on the flip side, I've had a lot of conversations with dad that have been subject to that treatment. And, you know, their level of self-worth goes down because that's it. They are the ones that are like, babe, go, I've got it.
You're babysitting the kids sort of
you
thing.
know,
like you're invalided.
Yeah, and you've been told that, oh, you know, no, don't worry about folding the towels because you'll fold them wrong. Who fucking cares? Like, and if it is such a massive issue, then sit down and like go, okay, I'm so happy and I'm so grateful that you're folding the towels, but can you please do it like this because, I don't know, they come out of the cupboard easier or they stack up nicer. Whatever you think, can you tell I'm not really attached to how I fold my towels? But I know some people are. You know, and have those conversations, but don't say, oh, you've done it wrong, go away. Because then when you actually are fucking burnt out and when you're crispy and when you've got nothing fucking left and you go, babe, I really need some help, he's going to go, I can't help you. I'm out. And that's exactly what's happened. So many relationships that, like, you know, on both ends of the spectrum.
And that unfortunately then proves her right in that, well, I have to do everything now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. And
it's just like, oh my God, like, you know, but that's just, you know, I wanted to touch on that because I know I've been hamping on the other end of the spectrum.
No, it's we'll get to the other end of the spectrum.
You know, but then you have that level of resentment again because you're like, oh, well, I have to do everything. But you've emasculated and you've, you know, put down the other party so much that they're not going to help anymore. They're not even going to try because they've been told it's wrong from left, right, up, down, you know, side to side. So they get to a point where I go, well, I'm not doing it.
Well, the further into that conversation is whose standards of cleanliness or quality of towel folding
I
is
just
more
that
important.
Out. Yeah,
like it's an example, but it's a worthy example because ultimately it's like, well, if someone has this standard and the other person doesn't, presumably they've got some standards. It's just not where yours are.
You'd hope so.
Then somewhere in between, there's got to be some middle ground because otherwise you're either going to A, get no help, or B, be constantly trying to fight them about where the towels are put, let alone how they're folded.
And that's the thing, that then has to be that conversation because if you get told that you've done something wrong without any actual reasoning on why or how,
or constructive criticism on how to fix it.
Or even constructive, as you said, like how to fix it, then what? Like, that makes no sense. And
how's that working out?
How much integration of, you know, that resentment can you, you know, have when you have those conversations? I still remember. So when I had my firstborn, and I said like I, you know, ended up with postnatal depression. I ended up packing up and moving up to the Pilbara with my other half. So he was FIFO.
Yep.
He's still FIFO now, but so because I didn't have the support I needed down here, and it was, and I guess you can talk to that sacrifice thing, and it wasn't worth my husband quitting his job and coming back to work in Perth. I shifted up there. So I shifted into a teeny tiny town. I think my brother and sister-in-law were there at the time as well, and stuff like that. So I could have a support system around me, because when we discussed family and children and stuff like that, you know, I was very straight up and down and adamant that I was like, you will be an active role in parenting. Otherwise, we're not doing this. And, you know, obviously he grew up with an active role in parenting and all that sort of stuff. So he was, yeah, cool, that's fine. I don't mind changing nappies and all of this sort of stuff. Like,
you mean the reasonable and adequate care of a person you're invested in.
Right.
Wild.
Crazy. So we had those conversations, but we also had conversations around who would do what and when and where. So we would both be able to have a break and, you know, one folds, the other one picks up, like all of that sort of stuff. And I remember, I think, and I was about to say I was just a stay-at-home mum at that time.
Way to minimise, mate.
I was like, right, I'm just stopping myself. But I was a stay-at-home mum at that stage because I had 2 babies. And he had a friend of his ring him up, and he's like, oh, like, do you get any time with, you know, Sky, your wife? And he goes, yeah, I do. And he goes, well, how the fuck do you get any time with her? Like, you know, because he had kids as well and all this sort of stuff. And
sorry. Alone time?
Yes, alone time.
Just checking.
And he goes, well, I come home and the conversation and the agreement, so transactional. But the conversation we had.
Well, it fucking is.
But it is. The conversation he had is like, I don't mind helping out because I know how hard, you know, everything's on top of you and I get that and all this sort of stuff. I just want to be able to take my boots off and I just want to be able to take my work clothes off. Like, let me get undirtified.
Yeah.
And then I'll help.
Well, just it puts you in a different frame.
Yeah.
To be able to sort of transition from this version of you to another version of you.
Right.
Like, it's a worthy thing.
Yeah, exactly. So he would do that, and then he would take the kids and he would take them outside to play.
Yeah.
Literally take them out of my vicinity, because obviously I'd been so touched out by that stage that I was just like, fucking get them off me. You know, the joys of having a newborn baby and a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah.
Good times.
I've met your kids. They're energetic.
Oh my God, that's, yeah. I love them. But he would take them outside and I'll finish cooking dinner. And then we would all sit down together and have dinner. And then he would take them to the bathroom. Ooh, bang my mic. He would take them to the bathroom. And get them bathed, do the bed routine. Ever since my children were born, he did night routine. He did bed routine. He did that alone. That was his bonding time, all of those sort of things. So he would come home from work, bath, you know, pajamas, story time, and getting ready for bed, because he would get home, you know, an hour or so before the kids go to bed. So he would do all of that while I would do the dishes or something, for example. And then he would put the kids to bed and he would come in and we would both work together to clean the kitchen, pick up all the toys, vacuum the, you know, food crumbs off the floor, because I had babies.
Ends up more outside than in.
Right. So we would do that together.
Yep.
And then we'd both sit down together. And it it sounds so simple, but I know a lot of people don't get this concept, right? Like, again, with that whole mental load, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Like, it's that never-ending thing of things to do, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But when you have that person that comes and takes a percentage of that load off and like work together with you, you both get to sit down and switch off.
Yeah.
And unfortunately what was happening with this friend is he was getting home from work and going and sitting in front of the TV and completely ignoring everything, would come and have dinner and go back to the TV and then, you know,
wonder why he's not getting any.
And then he would go to bed at like 8, 9 o'clock. But, you know, his, you know, wife at the time, they're separated now, would then go and do all the things, clean the house, like everything that we would do that would take us half an hour, she would have to spend the next 2 hours doing on her own. And then she would stop and go, I just want some alone time before having to go into bed and being touched by somebody else.
Yeah.
So she would sit and watch TV for a couple of hours. So it was like 10, 11 o'clock by the time she went to bed. And this is where that overload and then that extra tiredness sits onto it. And yeah, so when my husband said to him, I'm like, well, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, do you realize if you actually help, oh, that's not my job. Excuse me? He goes, oh, I work all day. And what? Like,
so this is why I'm glad you brought it back up.
Yeah.
Because there's two sides to that conversation that need to be reconciled with one another. We all make different sacrifices. We all have different responsibilities. And presumably, hopefully, you've had that conversation before you've decided to have kids or, you know, get married and have some idea of what you want that to look like.
Yep.
The expectation needs to be communicated on some level.
And I think this is
And
where
it's
a lot of that, on both ends of the spectrum. And that's where a lot of that disconnect has happened, because you've got two parties running under different conditionings of what is supposed to be. And like you enter that with those expectations, or you enter that with, oh, it'll change once. And if you, I'm sorry, if you believe it.
Mate.
If you believe it'll change once you have kids, you're fucking kidding yourself.
They don't change things. They exacerbate things.
Exactly. And
it's like money is the ultimate revealer of character. Kids are the ultimate revealer of... Like,
right.
like,
you want some shadow integration? Have children.
Yeah. Just see how many triggers you do actually have at that point.
Right.
'Cause you're going to find them.
Even ones you do, like, you know, when that whole like, oh, my kids have pushed all my buttons today, and even ones I didn't even know I had. That.
So I'm glad you brought this up, because I think it's a fundamental difference between men and women generally.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that we're talking about before we press record today.
Yep.
In that, where is one partner's responsibilities discharged? Is there such a thing? Are we, the scenario you just gave?
Yep.
He is performing a fundamental and essential role in that family's success. Keeping a roof over their head, keeping bills paid, keeping food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to come home, kick the boots off, get out of your work clothes, and have, I don't know, half an hour's decompression time.
Yeah.
You hear the stories about those guys who pull into the driveway and then are just sitting in their car for 10 minutes, just quietly. Or just mums as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do that.
Yeah. Where you just, it's exactly what it's for. It's decompression time. It's mentally shifting gears to become this version of yourself, knowing that that's the thing. It's like, what happens if that dude or that woman doesn't have those gears, or doesn't think they do, or has no interest in shifting gears?
Yeah.
Because they're resentful of their responsibility as well.
Yep.
Because I'm telling you now, how many men want that level of responsibility, really?
Fucking none. Maybe a small percent.
There are some.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't want to get up at fucking 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, to bust my ass, to get home at 6 o'clock and like to screaming kids and a resentful partner.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say one or the other is fair or right or wrong.
No.
But this is the conversation about everyone makes sacrifices one way or the other. So that's where that particular comment of, this is not my job.
Yeah. But then, yeah.
I think, and I know I'm not sitting here and saying that's fair enough.
I know, but then like that little part of me was just like, but like the protect and provide. You bring up the protect and provide a lot, and it's cool. Like I love it, and it's true. But at what aspect are you?
And this is why we brought it up.
Yeah.
Where is the distinction between protect and provide and care and sustain?
Yeah. But then
those are just random words that have different meanings to different people.
yeah.
But it's like, what does provide really mean?
Exactly. What does protect really mean? Because you can,
again, we're getting to that.
you can turn around and go, well, I provide for the family because I, work and then I put a roof over the head and like anything else is not my job. Well, you're supposed to actually protect as well. So
And what does that mean?
what does that mean?
And this is why it's bringing it up. Is like, if you're not clear about what you mean by that, if you're not on the same page with your partner is what you mean by your responsibilities, or if that's how you've been trained to just dust your hands, I did my job, there's food, shut up.
Yeah. But there's not even food, there's money to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I provide the resources by which this family survives and in theory thrives. It's not an argument. Just because it's true doesn't make it the hill by which you die on for not contributing
Or not providing in other ways.
And this is, I guess, maybe I'll push back a little bit on those dudes who think all men are for is protection and provision.
Who are they protecting them from?
We'll get to that.
That's a whole nother episode.
But if
just
those
drop
are
that
the
in there.
only two things that masculinity is for, I think you're missing a trick. I think there's a whole other array of things.
So you're missing fucking heaps of tricks.
That's my point. Because protect and provide is two things. What about guidance? What about the version of masculine nurturing that is fundamental to how young boys and young girls navigate the world around them? So we've had this chat off air, I don't know how long ago, and the necessity of, if you don't spend time with your boys and bond with them, they don't know how to embrace their feminine nature, for example.
Yeah.
If your partner doesn't spend time with them, he doesn't have the opportunity to provide through an interactive process how to protect and provide for their loved ones.
Yeah.
Because all they do is see dad come home, fucking kick the boots off, have a beer and go, oh, I guess that's what masculinity looks like. I'll just have a job and just be shit. It's a bit harsh, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so it's like, it's
harsh,
not
it's
just
true.
protect and provide. What happens that protection isn't just on that physical level. It's protecting them from the inadequacies of the limitations of social conditioning.
Yeah.
It's protecting them from their own lesser selves.
Mm.
And that requires an investment in showing up for the people they care for, allegedly care for, on as many different levels as that alpha is built for.
Yeah.
Because if you want to be an alpha, if you're the alpha male of your family, that is a leadership role, and that is a role purely, I argue, for caring about the people in your tribe.
Yeah,
It's not to aggrandize yourself and be a fucking egotistical douchebag. It's because that is a role that is specifically for service.
Yeah.
Again, this is an opinion. if you're not using that masculine energy to serve the people around you in every way you can, are you an alpha? Are you a leader?
No.
Or are you a cog in the wheel? Cog in the machine. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I think that's right. No, well, that's it. You're not, because then the wife of the family is then the alpha, because she's the one doing all of the things.
Weirdly, why does that lead to burnout?
Right.
Because
why does that lead to resentment? Why does that lead to,
And all right, I don't think this is the right moment to start having conversations about the balance of masculine and feminine in a relationship, let alone within yourself.
No.
But if I said that, and I suspect you'll agree with me here, generally women aren't particularly well built for that.
No.
All of the doing.
No.
Whereas masculine is better built for it.
Yeah.
But not exclusively either. And this is the balance.
That's it. And this is like the, when you work between the two, when you come together and work together as a team and, and all that sort of stuff. Like when you can step out of an energy system that's not serving you, and if that is doing all the doing and doing, and all of the things, you can step into something that's, better suited or how you want to run, whether you want to call it masculine, feminine, when you want to call that, with the man or the woman or whatever the case may be, like however that energy balance in with you, and then also within your partnerships and your friendships. But it's not only that, it's also like with your friendships and all of the things. You can step into those spaces like a lot better. And again, I will argue that, well, why do you think that where this guilt comes from, which is then underlaid by anger and shame and resentment, is because a lot of people are not stepping into that, space of just to be. They're always in the space of doing.
This is why I was pushing back at the have-tos and shoulds and switching offs. It's like, it's not about switching off 100%.
No.
Just giving you that space to embrace that nurturing, being you energy.
That's it. And it's something happened and it's gone.
Your turn, is it?
Yeah, right. Welcome to my brain. And it's
should we come back to it?
Maybe.
Okay. What was the hot take that you were talking about before we press record?
Was it the social media stuff? Was that one of them? Or was that...
It's one of them. That's a hell of a story that's probably worth telling.
I was going to say,
if it's the social media stuff I'm talking about. It was the one where...
We were talking about lots.
The one that triggered the conversation about lions.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's finish off with this then. I'm pretty sure we've been talking for ages.
A little.
So I saw an interesting video. I consume a lot of content visually. That's just how I intake information. So I was watching this video, interesting video, and it was talking about an idea or a concept around masculine and feminine, and how that I wouldn't say got it wrong, but they were breaking down the fact that the male or the masculine, however you want to fucking frame it, is self-preserving. So they're all about self, whether that's protecting and providing, but they're about self. So how can they protect and provide others if they're self-preserving? And then it was breaking down on the femininity, about how it was actually more on the feminine role that is the protector. I wouldn't necessarily say the provider from memory.
Can be.
But can be. But yeah, well, that's a whole nother other conversation, because I've spoken to so many people that are in those circumstances where they are all of the things, the protector, the provider, the fucking mother, the father, the whole fucking lot. And they don't want to be. But
weird, right?
But unfortunately, they're, depending on the circles you run or the people you hang around with, they're just meeting more and more people that are in that, like as you said, I'm just going to do my job and kick my boots off and that's me done type thing. Mm-hmm. So they're not willing to step back into those relationships because that's why. So back to my story. And so she was saying that the feminine is more of the protector. Like, who is the one that protects the children? It is the mother. Like, and on top of that, the feminine is more about community and other people and all of those sort of things. So, and that's where that, you know, takes a village to raise a child thing was coming from. So they're all about, you know, nurturing as well, because it's like not only nurturing self, but it's nurturing the community, it's nurturing the system, like the tribe, the family, whatever, you know, it is. And she was framing a lot from the animal kingdom, and she was framing a lot from like lions, like who was the one that goes out and does all the hunting? It's the lionesses. Who was the one that protects the cubs? It's the lionesses, and all this sort of stuff. And I know your face is going funny because we had this discussion, and like I know you can sit there and it's like, Sky, stop fucking talking so I can like put my argument in. And like I agreed with it and I didn't. Like, it was just an interesting thing. I'm super fascinated about patterns and behaviorals and things like that. And I'm like, oh, you kind of make sense. But I'm pretty sure there's, like, as you've mentioned, other aspects where that is role reversal. But in that sort of instance, like, I was like, that kind of really resonated, because when we look at the societal conditionings, as we spoke about, like at the start of this episode, that's essentially what was happening. It was like the mother was the protector of the children. She was the provider of the children, not necessarily with like money, but she was the one that would provide them with what they need and education and all of the things. And the masculine, in quotation marks at that point, as like the lion would be, was perched upon his hill looking over about how fucking great he's done.
Look, I can't make excuses for male ego. However, I want you to define what it is to protect, please. Or, you know what? That's not fair to put that on you. I'm curious as to what your interpretation of what this person in this video would consider protection.
Protection from harm, protection from...
What kind of harm? And this is, I'm going to be super annoying about this.
I know, that's fine.
Because
I would say...
it's a definitive...
Well, I can only see things from my model of the world, just like you can only see things from your model of the world and all of those sort of things. So when I listened to that and when I got that, like... And this is actually going to lead into our next episode. But I would say protection from harm, protection from abuse, protection from men. Like...
So...
But again, that's my model of the
world.
Not
disagreeing.
And you'd find out why next episode.
I know why.
Yeah.
I cannot make excuses for members of society who don't take their role in society and the place that they have in it with a due level of seriousness and action.
Yeah.
Not here for that. Who protects the woman? Who protects the mother?
You would fucking hope the masculine.
That is my point.
But...
So what I'm trying to draw the comparison of between is that is there a bit of a straw man argument going on where you have this guy who's just this fucking invalid. Oh, I got a job. I paid for stuff. She can figure the rest out.
Yeah.
And that is the encompassing model of how society works. Because even in like, all right, I don't think lion prides are a particularly great example of how human society works.
No, it was just a case of like she was saying that we were mammals and
it's not an unreasonable comparison.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But it's different nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's an animal model of something that in theory is more complex than that. And this is why I was sort of pulling it. What do you mean by protection? because in a lion pride, what you're protecting the young from matters.
Mm-hmm.
What do lionesses protect the cubs from?
Other predators and the lion.
What is the lion for? Yeah, can you see why I'm asking?
Yeah.
Because
Well, like, so if she's the one that goes out and hunts and brings back the food, so she's the provider.
Because frankly, they're better at it.
I know we are, but
In that society, they are. But it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So, like, what animal is fucking with a lion? What lion pride?
other lions
That. What's he for?
to protect the pride from the other lion.
That's kind of a big deal, because if you have other male lions, because of this is seemingly how that society works.
Yeah.
Those other male lions are there to protect their reproductive interests.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they kill another male lion's young to protect their potential for territory and offspring?
So do you hear that, guys? Why the fuck wouldn't you do something about someone that's hurting someone that can actually help you? Because this is a hill I will fucking die on.
And I'm about to join you. But this is why I'm saying it is completely indefensible
Yeah.
to be that man, that lion, whatever,
Yeah.
and not take that role fucking seriously.
Right. But then on top of that as well, like not actually pull up, because like
Say it.
I'm like, this is a whole nother, like episode. But when we talk in human beings, flesh suits with whoever soul we have,
What was that? Was that English?
yeah, because we're all like a bunch of spaghetti monsters.
These meat popsicle we pilot with our spirit.
Yeah, and like sort of referencing back to this video is just like when she was saying that like women protect their children, not all the time, but we'll find out why. But seemingly you would hear a lot of the times that women would, mothers will, move hell and high water to protect their children.
Of course they would.
Well, you'd fucking hope so.
But that's the point. It's
but that's the point.
Same argument of...
But a lot of the times they are protecting their children from father figures. And
again, I cannot defend the indefensible.
Right. So
and I won't.
If they're alpha, as you would say,
I don't know why. Again, this is why I wanted to draw pull apart that word protection, because we could pull apart the word alpha as well and say, is this an alpha douchebag who only wants the title and the privileges that go along with it?
Sits on his hill or whatever else.
Or is it the one who takes that job seriously and says, these are my people, I dare you?
Exactly. And a lot of the times you find that they don't. And not all the time, but when we talk to other women especially, and we're like, okay, who do we need protecting from? And it's like, well, men.
And
I can get that reference from like a lion's perspective, because you want to, but unfortunately what's happening is that protection is not happening. And
sometimes he's not there. Sometimes he does. Like again,
even if he
it's
is there,
a pretty piss poor attempt
to
defend the indefensible. But even if he is there, it's like, look, do we want to have a conversation about?
We're going in like fucking tangent land.
How should I put it?
Your turn.
The progressive dissolution of divine masculinity. That'll do.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother episode. But what's the point in masculine if it's not there to protect, provide, lead, all of the above?
Yeah. Hold space, guide, all of those sort of things.
What else is it for? In the same, what's the point of femininity if it's not to guide, nurture, care, create? Like you need both with. All right, we said we weren't going to do this today, but this is what. You need both of those things within yourself from every moment, no matter what you're doing, let alone the balance of the people around you. In terms of what that video was saying, and that there's a self-preservation to masculinity that invalidates it. I don't know what she said. I'm putting words in her mouth.
Yeah, it was a case of, she was saying, like, how can, like, in this system, and again, I know it doesn't cover for everyone, but
and that's ultimately like, because you can say something like that, and because it's interpreted as this all-encompassing statement, it doesn't seem to allow for any nuance, knowing that there's always nuance.
There's
and
always,
it's not true or right or fair to be that blanket statement, one way or the other.
No, that's it. But it was basically saying, like, you know, how can the masculine, if that's self-preservating, be protecting, because the only thing he's going to protect is himself. And I think...
And I really disagree with that, because...
I agree and I disagree.
Yeah.
So I agree because...
Depends on the example you're looking at as well.
Depends on the example you're looking at. Depends on, you know, the structure and the framework and all of those sort of things. But I also agree because I have a bunch of healthy masculine men in my life. That sounded way weirder than it needed to be.
You know what? That's one of the least weird things that we've tried. One of us has tried to pull ourselves up on. And it's like, no, it's a valuable thing to say.
Yeah. And I disagree with it because on the flip side of it, I've had a lot of, on that other end of the spectrum, I've had a lot of people in my life that have been self-preservating and did not fucking care about my protection or my safety.
That's why you need the first version.
Yeah.
Because if they're not there, I'm sorry to say, mate, you are going to be victim to some fucking bell end at some point in whatever level and form that, you know.
And then, so when we look at it on that end of the spectrum, and unfortunately, like 4 out of 5 women have been subject to that.
I didn't know it was 4 out of 5.
Oh, I
thought it was like 2 out of 3.
No, it's
2 out of 3 or
fucking
something.
high. It's like 4 out of, and I'm going to talk like it's like sexual abuse stats.
That
is 4 out of 5 women have experienced some sort of sexual trauma. Like, you know, on all ends of the spectrum.
Good. I'm glad you qualified, because I feel like there's a discussion to be had about what people mean when they say sexual trauma. Like, there's profound atrocities, and then there's he looked at me weird.
Well, it's not even a case of looked at me weird. It's being, you know, coerced, touched, all of those sort of things.
But those are within the polarity of this conversation.
Yeah. So when you have that, when you have such a high percentage of women that have had that some sort of experience not being protected by the thing that is supposed to protect them, you again, resentment.
I get that, but the irony is that,
and I know it happens on both ends.
It's
of the spectrum.
drawing the conversation to sort of equate the same group of people lumped in one side of that conversation or the other sort of thing. It's like, there wasn't a dude who could protect you there. I fucking hope so anyway, because if there was, well, that's
the other side.
That is absolutely a him thing.
And that's the other side of the equation as well, is a lot of the times there is someone around to protect. They just don't.
And that's where it's more of that cannot defend the indefensible.
Yeah. But
it's like, what was it? It was an accusation leveled at Switzerland during World War II. To be neutral is to silently support the oppressor. Mm-hmm. And that's not an unreasonable interpretation of that dude who sees it going on and does nothing.
Yeah.
The point I wanted to bring up before about the self-preservation thing, and I asked you this before.
Yeah.
And it took a different turn from where I thought we were going. But why do we generally revere soldiers, warriors, for example?
Oh, yes, because they are sent out to war to protect the country or
Because
a country,
they
depending
are
on where they go.
acting completely counterintuitively to what is that fundamental, very animalistic self-preservation instinct.
Yeah.
It is they are literally putting themselves in harm's way for a thing that they hopefully have interpreted as something that is bigger than them. I think that's what divine masculinity is for, is that your job is to look after everyone in your circle, in your care. That's what I mean when I say masculine protection.
Yeah.
Now,
and I'll have to agree with you, but
the justification for why that war is a thing, well, we can talk about that. But the point is that it's that fundamental recognition that the reason that person is the leader of the tribe, the reason the person puts on that fucking uniform is because they've transcended the concern of self. Maybe they look after themselves pretty well so that they can do a better job of that transcending the self, so they can protect more adequately. It's why the male lion who leads the pride gets the prime cuts, because if he's not there, there's going to be some pricks who come in and try and take some shit. Does that make sense?
it does make sense.
It doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but this is what it seems to look like as far as I'm concerned. In that the necessity of responsibility of this role,
Yeah.
whether that's alpha male, alpha female, whatever,
Yeah.
to outweigh the responsibility, there's got to be a couple of privileges. In the same way that to balance out the privilege needs a deep commitment to the responsibility. Why else would you pull on the uniform? Why else would you carry a gun into war?
Yeah.
When we talked about sacrifice in that mum guilt sort of conversation, this is kind of the other side of the conversation.
Yep.
Like, do you think that dude wants to leave his family? Do you think he wants to sort of face down 3 other male lions that are trying to come into his territory? Like, does he want to?
Depends.
But that's my point.
I've spoken to a numerous amount of people that like can't wait to leave their family.
Again, I'm talking about that dude,
Yeah.
not that dude.
But yes, no, from a lot of people's perspective as well.
But this is the different versions of sacrifice to have a conversation about. And again, I feel a bit weird about trying to turn this into a conversation about the balance of masculine and feminine,
I was going to say,
rather than the mum guilt conversation. But it's like, I can't make excuses for people who won't take their own responsibility seriously.
right.
Whether they can acknowledge that it's their responsibility or whether they've been conditioned to be in this fucking matrix of like, oh, that's a women's job or that's a man's job.
Yeah.
Because it goes both ways. We know it does.
Oh, 100%. But that's where a lot of that guilt comes from.
Yeah. But because the sacrifices are different,
Yeah.
when you are in your own frame of constantly being hypervigilant of every sacrifice that you have to make, you forget to recognize or at least invest a modicum of thought into what they might be sacrificing, which is maybe time away from their kids or not having a fucking off mode.
Yeah.
We forget that other people have their shit too. It just looks different than ours.
Mm-hmm.
And we negate their experience in preference of ours because we don't know any different. Having a modicum of empathy for yourself, that's a hell of a start. But having a modicum of empathy for the person you're dealing with and hopefully having a successful conversation where they have the same for you. I can't think of a more appropriate way to cure mum guilt than that.
Right. Or even just allowing yourself to feel those things.
If you can't acknowledge that shit, if you're not aware of that shit, how can you have a conversation about it? let alone be heard.
Yeah, that's it.
Did we go far enough with mum guilt? It's only been an hour and 45.
I think we went far enough, and then we went and turned right, and then maybe turned left a little bit along the way and sort of looped back around. But it it's like picking it apart is that interesting facet of like where it comes from and why, and how how to overcome it is just
like the last thing I said is like when all you do is focus on your trials and tribulations, weirdly they grow.
Yeah. But then also I just would like to add in there as well, it's just like, well, when you are focused all on your trials and tribulations, and then when you ask for help or support and you get that's not my job, well, no shit, you're going to be resentful. Like,
again,
you got nothing.
I'm not interested in defending the indefensible. It's like, that's your favorite person in theory.
In theory.
Why would you not care for them?
That's
it. They're bringing something to you that is hurting them.
Yeah. So for wanting to do something for yourself, for wanting to have some time away, for wanting to be able to switch off, even if it's just for a little while, you are not wrong for wanting that. You are actually, well, you're allowed, but you are entitled to it, because everybody,
you're not you otherwise.
Everybody needs that time to switch off. And if that person that you are communicating to go, hey, I need some time out, like, and is not receptive, well, then you like listen to the episode before or the one before it when we talk about lines and boundaries. Where is your line in the sand? Because the more you allow yourself to feel guilty over shit you've done nothing wrong for, the more that's going to grow too. Like,
wonder why the divorce rate's so high.
There's a whole nother conversation on that.
Yeah.
But I think we should leave it there.
This was the first genuine Todd and Sky version, or Sky and Todd version, where we get the long version plus all the tangents. So
yep,
you're welcome. Thank you for persevering after the first hour.
Yep. Be good.
Be kind.
No bar fights. I was like, fuck, what is it?
Be smart.
Be smart.
Be your best you.
Yep.
No bar fights.
Be your best you. That I'll keep that one.
We're going to give Sky a lot of slack because she's had a week. And it is literally an hour and 50 minutes into this conversation.
Yep.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.